trying to form there towards the Cairo community and even up there towards Bald Hill. But now as of the 1:05 hour, those hail reports should be pretty minimal, and so far I haven't seen any confirmed hail reports. I do see folks there in the chat saying the wind picking up in Fulton around 20 to 30 miles an hour, those gusts. I'll pull up the chat real quick, and if anyone wants to add in their weather reports, feel free to include that in there, and we'll be sure to forward that along. But 20 to 30 miles an hour, that makes sense over there towards Fulton. And that's, again, the outflow boundary. That's along the leading edge. So this is just a few of those spot-up showers, but back there behind it towards Saltillo and Manatee, eventually moving closer towards your direction. So what are we getting? Well, a lot of lightning, and I believe this will result in some sporadic power outages. So far, it's been kind of spotty. What we expect. Sporadic is the term that we use there. And we're seeing about, well, let me put this on an exact number. So we're seeing about 200 there in Tippah County, up there towards Alcorn County, 700. Even closer to the northwest Alabama area, 600, and Calhoun County coming in with about 100. So that's where we're talking about the lightning being the primary cause of this. But up towards Tippah and Alcorn County, I'm also not putting it past a few of those small limbs being knocked over and potentially causing those limbs to fall on power lines. And that's where we do get some of those outages as well. That's where the impacts will be with this setup. The lightning, the rainfall, already getting some of those flood advisories up there towards the Memphis area and up there closer to the Tennessee state line. I mean, we see Shelby County and Tennessee flash flood warning. So heavy rainfall expected with this, but so far it's been a calm morning, now transitioning into a more active afternoon. I see Brooklyn asking, is there going to be any signs of tornadoes or tornadoes possible? I'll pull up the wind mode, but no, there will not be tornadoes with this setup. The one thing that we're watching, or at least the two things we're watching, are small hail reports and gusty winds up to 60 miles an hour. And so far we've gotten about 20 to 30 miles an hour being reported. Raining and windy in Pontotoc, couple of thunder for sure. Michaela, appreciate that report. Lafayette Springs, nice beautiful breeze and cloudy. I will say, if you are dealing with dry conditions now, that line will gradually shift towards the south. Last night's model run gave us the idea of that line, that linear path that this was going to be taking towards the south and east, affecting a good portion of us here in North Mississippi. So that's what we'll be getting heading into the overnight hours as well, or at least the late afternoon, early evening hours. So if you're down in the Golden Triangle, eventually working its way towards you. Solid rain in downtown New Albany, dog under the bed, started with the thunder. We have a dog like that at home, and he does not like storms. So I told Annalise to, of course, she's doing a great job taking care of our family back at the house and making sure that everyone's taken care of. And she, of course, gives the dog some extra loving whenever they're dealing with the stormy setup. So appreciate you guys for joining us for Mississippi Live Weather. Just an update throughout the afternoon. One of the things that was issued this afternoon that also sparked some attention was this level 1 risk that was put in place for these line of storms. And it makes sense. You know, the highest lightning output that we're getting is towards Union County and Pontotoc County, those areas in that level 1 threat for severe weather. What does this mean? Is this going to be a similar environment to what they dealt with up north? No, and that's what I was saying. No tornadoes are expected with this. It's going to be gusty winds and some large hail reports. But here in our area, reports are going to be so minimal. And last night we discussed that. I said I wouldn't be shocked if they put us in a marginal risk, but I'm not expecting a ton of reports. And so far, if we put those reports on there, none. The only reports that we've gotten so far is up around Memphis, where we've gotten those flash flooding reports. And honestly, we don't want to deal with that either. But we're not expecting a ton of reports out of this setup. So no, this is not tornadic, but definitely bringing some heavy rainfall. Over the last few minutes, just because we have some flash flood advisories and warnings, I think it's worth checking the flooding potential. And as we put on the latest there and continue to loop this through the area, you know, we can see those heaviest outputs towards Memphis and Moscow, Tennessee. That's why the flash flood advisories and warnings have been issued. Here in North Mississippi, yes, there's a few locations towards Alcorn County that we've gotten towards 2 inches, but as that line continues to move on through, additional rain chances will be there. And New Albany is an area I'm watching for. Saltillo, Ecru, Tupelo even are included within that, where the heaviest rainfall is going to move through, and we're going to get some storms on the backside of this that are going to amount to 1, maybe even 2, maybe even more than 2 inches across North Mississippi. And we can focus more on our Monroe County radar site for these rain chances. And yeah, well, let's actually swap it over to that was looking at Memphis. Let's swap it over to our Monroe County site. And you can see, yeah, over in Lafayette County, we are getting about 2 inches there on some of our higher resolution data coming out of our Monroe County site. And towards New Albany, another area that we're watching for, we're starting to see those yellows pop up. And you can see the legend at the top of the screen, that scale that's indicating yellow is 2 inches, and more of that is to come. So as we put on our regular radar real quick, our Mama Justice Doppler radar, the storms continue to progress on through. And one thing that I'm watching right here, see that green line that's out ahead of these storms? That is our outflow boundary. And earlier on, it was building directly into these storms, now out a little bit ahead of it. And what I'm hoping this is doing is becoming outflow dominant, where this outflow boundary goes out ahead of these storms and will limit our strong storm potential and definitely our severe weather potential getting further into the afternoon. But with that outflow boundary, as that continues to dip further south, we are going to see additional development, and these storms are kind of going to feed into those locations as that cold front moves through North Mississippi. So that's one thing that it will be doing, is kind of feeding energy into these storms. But once it gets out ahead of it, that's where we see a weakening phase start to take place, and we're hopeful that that will continue to take shape. So looking across the area, we do have a few of those isolated cells down there towards West Point, continue to pay attention to, but those are not the severe weather threat. The severe weather threat really remains right along that outflow boundary. We do have a good look out of Tupelo getting back up yesterday, and so let's take a look out of Tupelo kind of towards the north, and if it's not towards the north, oh yeah, there we go. That is a direct view into those line of storms, and this is what we're driving through. And guys, I'll be honest, driving into work to do our live update, I drove through the outflow boundary, knocked down a limb, and it put a crack in my windshield. So you can see damage even in Lee County. So that's, I guess I could put that report in the chat, but that limb, it was a sub-severe gust that knocked it over, but it can still be impactful. But this is the view that we're dealing with in northern Lee County as that line of storms continues to move on through. And this definitely looks menacing. Fortunately, has not gone to severe parameters, but definitely watching our Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling Tupelo camera there to get the very latest, and appreciate the North Mississippi Storm Chasers for giving us those views. A cool thing that you're seeing here, so this is looking west. So west, you have the sunny skies out ahead of this. What we've gotten through the bulk of the morning, but back behind it, that's the storms moving through the area and got some low cloud decks, I'll be honest, and heavy rainfall there, but not seeing anything, nothing reaching down to the surface. So again, no tornado threat with this, but we're definitely going to see some potential small hail and some stronger wind gust as well. Over towards Pontotoc, we should have been checking these cameras long ago. See it pulled up right there. I might have just lost access to this. Hang on one second. Pull up, there we go. So here's a look out of Pontotoc there with the North Mississippi Storm Chaser camera. I'm going to try to log back into this because I believe I just lost access. But that shouldn't be an issue to log back in. So as we're getting a look there, you can see the lower cloud deck moving through the area, maybe a bit of a disorganized shelf moving in as well, but just heavy rainfall. Look at all that red that's showing up. And the red is the heaviest portions of that rainfall, and there's your heavy rainfall right there. You can't even see to the other side of the horizon. So that's really the primary threat, and you're definitely getting a bit of that shelf cloud to form. So any of those pictures that you guys have, submit those through the Mississippi Live Weather app, and that can include reports, that can include updates in regards to the wind gust or any of those severe weather threats if you're getting those there at the surface. Just letting us know that in the chat so we can forward that along to the National Weather Service. Again, don't expect a ton of those reports, so some pictures of the cloudy sky is definitely what we'll be watching as we continue through the rest of our broadcast. So I might have to go to the monitor real quick. Well, there's Matt buddy. Himself. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you
doing? All right?
I'm doing good. I think you and I are battling for access.
When I logged in, I bumped you out. I think that's what happened. So you try logging that thing back in, and it'll get back to you. I'll come over here and I'll hit analyst for a second and let you get back in. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Gabe doing a great job here. Only reason I'm kind of hopping in here for a second so you get that computer reestablished again. Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon here alongside our meteorologist Gabe Maynard. Level 1 out of 5 severe weather risk. Again, a possibility to see maybe a couple sporadic reports of wind. I had the Mississippi Live drone up a little bit ago before the rain hit. Again, this is one of those more bark than bite sort of situations where it looks, I think, worse to the naked eye than the reality is. There is going to be some flooding potential out of this, as Gabe mentioned, that one of our concerns. He referenced that Pontotoc area, again, where our storm is the strongest at this moment. Looking three-dimensionally on that using our Mama Justice Doppler here and kind of getting an analysis on that. Not a particularly impressive look once you get up too terribly high. We'll find out which of my 17 monitors that's moved to. Let me pull up the 3D look on that and get it over to this one. There you go. And so this shows kind of that hail core there up around maybe 25, maybe actually almost to 30. I do have one little spot there where there could be some hail aloft. But I think in this sort of situation with the atmosphere like it is, I think it's more likely that this is probably really heavy rainfall. But if that one spot were the case, let's kind of look down on where that was. We show that kind of moving there close to 278 kind of where it splits off there, Highway 6, just near, I think that's probably Tom Bigby State Park, where you can kind of see right where my mouse is there. That's the lake, excuse me, at Trace State Park, I should say. So I'll bring Gabe back in here for a moment. And Gabe, just kind of looking at this here, more bark than bite out of these storms, could have some hail, could have some strong winds. That flash flood warning, though, remains in effect, I think, up there, DeSoto County, one to probably go and check on as well.
Yes, and Matt, I think I'm still struggling with access here. I'm restarting the computer real quick to try and get access back. But yeah, you're exactly right. More bark than bite. We're getting that view there in Pontotoc of a live image as that moves into Pontotoc County. And you're getting those low clouds, so this is going to look very menacing, but the heavy rainfall, the primary concern with that. And yes, the flash flooding threat that continues to be up there towards northwest Mississippi. I'm going to toss it over to the monitor real quick so we can go over this while this tries to get access back. Gotta love technology on days like today, right? So as we clear this off and we bring it back to our regular Mama Justice Doppler radar, you can see that up there towards DeSoto County and even heading into, actually let's put on the latest scan, DeSoto County and even over there towards Marshall County, we are continuing to see a flash flood warning in effect that expires at 4:15. And let me make sure that's for both locations. Yes. So 4:15 on your Friday, and we're going to continue to monitor that. But as we continue to look at the rainfall rates, that's where we've gotten a plethora of rainfall. I might have two. Let's go out of our Memphis radar site. And let's continue to look at those peak threats. And you can see that, not impossible to get a bit of a hail core there, but overall, we're not expecting anything severe. It's just going to be that flooding potential. It continues to be down here along that leading edge that we're seeing maybe some small hail potential, but even then, I'm not overly impressed with what we're getting. And maybe, if we're really stretching it, you can see that we are 1 inch hail. I think that's really overdoing it. I think here at the surface, maybe
that's
about
probably overdone a little bit there, Gabe. Yeah, I think I agree. So to get that back, you're going to have to reboot Lynx. That's what happens here. This is kind of a weird thing between the way in which we log in remotely and Lynx. When they get angry, Lynx just says, start from scratch. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll take over. You wave me down when it's back up, and we'll kind of go from there. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. And appreciate everybody for, again, your comments as I'm watching here, kind of behind the scenes. Some questions, obviously, about specific locations, Pittsburgh, Tupelo. So let's talk specifically about some of those. First off, we have no official severe weather warnings in place right now. The only storm that even kind of looks like it's close is this Pontotoc County storm. And even then, when I use something that we don't always show on here, looking at maximum estimated hail size, it's saying maybe 1/2 inch on the largest potential hail there versus a few minutes ago where that yellow was maybe 3/4 inch size hail up there near the Nixon area, just kind of north of this would be State Park there, 98 again was largest. And so out of that, you go on the wide shot here, there of significant concern as far as hail goes. So again, this is not a high end, and it's highly see very few. But some trees just could get knocked down on this. And then there's the flooding rainfall potential. We kind of referenced this a moment ago here. We're looking up here in DeSoto, Marshall counties involved in this flash flood warning. That remains there in effect, as you could see through, that would be 4:15, I think, as of 1:09. So 9 minutes ago, about the time this would have come, latest update coming in. About 3 inches of rainfall, as you can read kind of beside me there. I can't, so I got to look at the side one for this. About 3 inches of rainfall, 1 to 3 inches of rain have already fallen. Expected rainfall rate, another 1 to 2 inches per hour. So, I mean, you get under one of these, again, some urban flooding issues possible there out of this. Again, where the rainfall has been the most significant. So the rain is the consistent issue with that there. That's why that flash flood warning remains in effect. Looking from Oxford back toward Pontotoc, again, these are just spotty, normal sort of showers and thunderstorms. These are not the kind that are going to be likely producing severe weather on really any of these that I'm seeing. And honestly, that green line, Gabe was talking about this a minute ago, extending right there, right? This kind of green line that goes from Algoma back out here toward Verona. Those are locations where, Gabe, it's not impossible that we could get along that leading edge, maybe some 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. But as you mentioned a moment ago, that outflow is detached. And that detachment you see here tells us, again, it doesn't get in the most unstable air. It's one of the many reasons why tornadoes are not something we expect out of this setup.
No, thankfully. And we saw plenty of tornadoes up north in Illinois yesterday, and grateful that that's not our forecast today. And we're continuing to pray for the folks that were impacted. But, that cold front is the same cold front they dealt with yesterday, just a much more of a limited factor here in North Mississippi. So looking at the latest on reflectivity, we're going to be going back and forth from our Memphis radar site to our Monroe County radar site. Of course, paying attention to Monroe County now as we're closer to that site as these storms do move on in. And as these move through the Saltillo area, I do have a report to let you guys know about. Jason Nichols up there at Lee County E911 saying tree down with power lines down 400 block of road 885 in Saltillo, tree across power lines on Bramblewood Circle in Belden, and tree down on Central Street near Plant Street in Plantersville. So kind of the northern Lee County area, what we were watching for some of those gusts. And let's pull up our velocity real quick because, yeah, these were far from being anything severe as those moved on through. But you can see up there towards the Belden community and over there towards Saltillo, wasn't severe, but it probably still packed a punch. Talking 20, 30 miles an hour. They might be underdoing it with the winds aloft compared to what they're getting at the surface, but definitely something to pay attention to as we've dealt with already a few reports coming in towards northern Lee County as those have moved through the area. So if you have any pictures, feel free to send those in. Was kind of looking at some of the SLCs that you guys have submitted, the scary looking clouds, which we have plenty of those here in North Mississippi right now. But if you do have any reports, and that could come with a limb down, that could come with a tree down, send those into the Room to Room Weather Center through the Mississippi Live Weather app so we can forward that information along. So appreciate Jason there for the report, and hopefully that's the last report that we get. But as we look at that outflow boundary, we're continuing to see that out ahead of this. And I will say this, the outflow is gusty. That's what we were dealing with over at the Maynard household whenever we were monitoring things and I was driving into work. I had the outflow boundary knock down a limb and hit the windshield of my car. So, that's where we can get those gusty winds, knocking down the trash can as well. We had to move that. So if you're one that leaves the trash can at the road, you might want to move it up closer to the house as this line continues to move on through. I do want to look at the winds along that outflow. It's unfortunately not going to be the best view. But as we look at the storms, you can see that one that we were watching towards Pontotoc continues to stand out as the best structure on these storms, but far away from severe limits. But it is going to have some gusty winds. Just looking at that right there, it's not doing it justice. 12 to 18 miles an hour. I really think we're getting upwards of about 30 miles an hour, especially if earlier on we were dealing with 20 to 30 miles an hour in Fulton. So I would go ahead and prepare for that as it moves through Longview and Enville. Let's do a storm track on this as it has been a moment since we've tracked this out. And again, I say outflow boundary is kind of a hard thing to track out, but we can fortunately, I think we have enough data to where we can go back along this outflow and kind of track that out. So as it's moved through the Friendship community and off there towards Longview, we're talking, I think we keep it about 20 miles an hour. So we're going to go specifically on this one that's in eastern Pontotoc County and now moving through the Belden community and eventually working its way into downtown Tupelo. So here in a moment, you're probably going to hear a few rumbles at the Mississippi Live Weather Studio. So be paying attention to that. And as we look at that latest track, we're Fawn Meadows by 129, Furs 129, Tracewood 131, Zion 131 as well, the Bissell community 133, Willimon by 133, Pinehurst 134, and Belvedere Hills by 135. Now let's broaden it out a bit so that way we cover a few more communities. And you can see that we're talking Tupelo 137, 10 to 12 minutes or so, Verona 149, Plantersville 150, and 206 there towards Shannon. So that's moving into Lee County. This is the heftiest part of the storms, and those will continue to move through the area. Now, one thing I did notice, let me go back a couple scans. Oh, it's not going to have it. I was wondering because it's like lightning is way down on this storm. We're talking 27 strikes, but it's because we restarted the system. So those strikes are going to be rebuffing or re-updating as we get into the latest data. So that number is going to be completely going up as we head through the rest of our afternoon. So as we continue to look at those reports, National Weather Service in Memphis saying those strong winds were likely due to the outflow boundary itself that moved through the Tupelo area. Tupelo Airport gusted to 47 miles an hour as the outflow boundary moved through a few minutes before the storms actually arrived. So the storm's not the big issue. That's what I was talking about just a moment ago. The outflow boundary continues to be the gustiest part of this setup. So for folks there in Shannon, Goodford, Buckhorn, and Cardsville, even up there at Smithville, going to be dealing with those gusty winds as well. sub-severe, but still going to be gusty. And as we track that out, I do believe this outflow boundary will continue to move at about 20 miles an hour or so. So let's go ahead. That's a rough track. We're going to redo that. Sometimes I like to think that I'm good at art with a mouse, but then it just doesn't work out sometimes. So as we track that out, and we're going to continue to move at about 20 miles an hour directly south, we can see that we're talking the Troy community, 126, Evergreen, I mean, basically right now. Goodford, 127, just mentioned to you a moment ago. Buckhorn, same thing for you, 129. Shiloh, 132. Shannon, 134. Pine Grove, 139. And Holka by 140. I want to continue to look at broader views so that we would get every community in there that we need to. And we're seeing Shannon, 134. Smithville, 143. Detroit, 147. That's over there towards Lamar County, Alabama. Okolona, 155. Hatley, 204. Amory, 204. Houston, 209. Soligent 213, Bruce 213, and Vardaman by 217. We do have cameras around the area that we're able to get a visual on this. Unfortunately, I do believe Smithville is still down. I'll pull up northern Monroe County just to make sure, but I think another storm in the past took that one out. Yeah, because it's definitely not looking like that in Smithville right now. But you can see that at least the reporting station is active and updating. 88 degrees, dew points at 74, still feels like 97. So I forgot who it was in the chat, but doing a great job of talking about the positives with these storms, bringing rain-cooled air. So if we look at Amory, we're 93 degrees right now, feels like 108. I still think the reporting station is a little bit toasty compared to what it should actually be. But either way, it is still warm, it is still hot, and it is still muggy. But these line of storms that are moving into the area are going to continue to bring us some of that rain-cooled air on top of those gusty winds and things like that. So as we see on the horizon, definitely going to be those dark, menacing clouds moving into the area. But as you look at the horizon, not seeing anything reaching down to the surface. So we're really not seeing too much in regards to scud cloud. And we're definitely not seeing anything tornadic. So that's always a welcome sight. And a big thank you to the North Mississippi Storm Chasers for letting us utilize their camera network to, of course, assess what's going on. We also have a view in Houston. This should help with our reporting station numbers a bit as well. You know, that's been cooled off. This is as the outflow boundary moved through. So this is as the outflow boundary is approaching. Unless that system is just completely wrong, Matt, would it be able to pick up on that? The winds? Because, I mean, 38 miles an hour stands out. That would be the...
That is... Now, hold on. That's probably pulling it from Tupelo Airport on that.
Okay. That makes sense. We're at 47 miles an hour over at Tupelo Airport, so
exactly.
That makes sense.
So I think we're not quite there in Houston yet.
Okay, so yeah,
I'm trying to get you that drone shot. It's transcoding right now. I'll try to get you that drone shot here in a minute.
Perfect. And was that in Tupelo?
It's above my house, so yeah, basically.
Lee County. So there we go. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll check that out here in just a moment. But yes, still over in the Tupelo Airport getting those gusty conditions, 38 miles an hour. That's enough to knock down a few limbs. Trust me, I would know. 75 degrees, dew point at 64 degrees. That's, again, some data coming out of Chickasaw County. And as you look at those clouds on the horizon, I don't know which way this is facing. I would have to look at that behind the scenes, but definitely getting some of those dark clouds over in Chickasaw County. I want to bring it back. Actually, before we go, let's bring it back up to our Tupelo camera because we'll be able to see these storms approaching as they're not too far away. And yeah, you can see the gusty winds. We're still 38 miles an hour there at the Tupelo Airport, 75 degrees. I'm not complaining about that part of the forecast. 64 degrees, those dew points, and you're getting those dark clouds on the horizon. That's over there towards Belden. This is looking directly west into these storms, and that's going to be western Lee County that starts to see these storms initially, but trust me, it does build more towards the north, and will eventually move into the downtown Tupelo region as well. So we'll be checking this camera multiple times to get a visual on that, but of course, watching our Tupelo camera, and even towards Pontotoc. Pontotoc was dealing with a heavy downpour that's going to be overhead right now, and blinding rainfall, Matt, that's the story, just that flooding potential that continues to linger.
And that's the only reason I don't have the live drone up right now. I went to go put it back up because I noticed I got the video, then you went live. I'm like, oh, I'll put it back up, and it started raining, and I didn't want to run the drone in the rain there. But we'll get a shot here from over Tupelo as this came in just a little bit ago. And this again about 1 o'clock today. One of the things that Gabe, and I talk a lot about in this scenario here is those scary looking clouds. Plenty of those looking toward the north. The gray areas that you'll see, kind of those lightest gray colors, typically those are spots where we're talking about heavy rainfall. You'll notice my camera kind of shifting a little bit there. The winds were, once I got it up there, probably 40, 45 miles per hour. My drone only goes about 30 on the speed, so it started pushing it. As you can kind of see, it's drifting backward a little bit, so I had to kind of reposition things, try to get it back over. So didn't lose track of it as well. But again, a lot of scary looking clouds with that. As it moved through the outflow. Again, the strong winds will typically run a little bit ahead of any of the more active, thunderstorm activity that comes with it, with the rainfall kind of running behind. So that's about 1 o'clock today, using the Mississippi Live drone here in the Tupelo area. As we bring it back in here to the mobile room-to-room weather center here for a moment, one of the things that Gabe talking about with this is that we do not have any sort of real tornado threat with what we have out there this afternoon and evening, thankfully. That's just kind of not the way things are sort of structured out there for us. The gap, which the green line here represents that rain-cooled air. That's what was kind of blowing my drone around. The red back there is where the storms are. And if you imagine when I put that thing up, it had been right there, just beyond when the first gust of wind happened, but before the rainfall moved toward the area. So you have this zone where it's going to be windy, and you're going to see some weird twisty stuff up in the clouds. That should not concern you that we're talking about tornadoes. Weird twisting stuff in the clouds. When you think about this, leaves moving across a parking lot during fall don't move in a straight line. So you can have straight line winds, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be some eddies that occur. Those little spins that you see when you see the leaves kind of moving around there. And so you're going to have that even in the clouds where there's little spins up there. That doesn't mean tornado. When we're talking about tornadoes, that's where we're going to have a rotating column of air, a solid, well, I guess air is not solid, but a focused rotating column of air initiated by rotation higher up in the thunderstorm that extends from the cloud to the ground. A traditional tornado, that's what you're going to have. You can't have what are called downspouts. You take horizontal rotation, tilt it in the vertical because the storm develops over top of it. That's how you get water spouts as well as land spouts that sometimes happen in the delta along boundaries there. All of that to say, any of the twisting you see up in the clouds, not tornadoes in this setup. This gap we see here tells us that the most unstable air south here is not able to get up into the thunderstorms there. And so that's one of the things that limits their overall intensity and one of the reasons we're not concerned with tornadoes out of this setup. And yeah, I know we do have this one little storm there kind of running ahead closer to the boundary itself, but it's not as intense. So any chance we have for active or severe weather today, we're thinking maybe some hail, we're thinking flash flooding, and maybe some gusty winds. Locations vulnerable because of the ice storm. You knew I had to say it. The ice storm issues here. That's probably where Gabe's, I'll bring Gabe back in here for a second. I would almost guarantee that you got hit by a dangler. Well, a branch was just kind of dangling there and fallen to another branch, and then the wind hits it and hits your windshield there. I doubt that was something that was actually broken off the tree. It was probably already just waiting to blow down. Is that a fair statement? I didn't live your life, so.
Well, be grateful you didn't, because now there will be a windshield replacement coming in the future. But yes, it was, and it wasn't a large limb. That's another thing about it, is it's going to be the effects of the ice storm. Those little short danglers, as you call them, just kind of hanging out and waiting on those sub-severe gusts to knock them over. And it was breezy, knocked over our garbage can, knocked over just a few loose things in the yard. So, we kind of had to batten down the hatches before we left the house. And unfortunately, the limb wasn't battened down as well. So the only unfortunate part about it is it can cause damage, even those sub-severe gusts.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to send that back to you. You want to head back to the wall?
Well,
or do you have some pictures, things? Yeah, go ahead.
Pictures and power outages. So as we toss it back here, and let me make sure, as we kind of toss it, it's not up. You know what? Let me work on this behind the scenes, and should be able to pull that up here in just a moment. Matt, if you take this for 1 minute, I will have it up.
Okay, that's fine.
1 second, actually.
You used the minute the way my daughter says. It's been a minute. Well, a minute could be an hour or how long. Okay.
Well, one of the few moments in my life
those power outages.
Yeah, so this is basically what we're getting over there in northern Pontotoc. This is closer to Ecru, right along Highway 15, where we're seeing a ton of outages start to be reported to the Pontotoc Electric Power Association. As we look at those numbers, we're 448 towards Ecru, like I mentioned, and even southeast of New Albany, moving right along I-22, 113 outages. This would be not all the way to Sherman just yet, but maybe around that Blue Springs exit, starting to see 113 outages right there. As we look western Pontotoc, 179 outages. This will be closer to that Lafayette County line. I know some folks over there in Lafayette County are excited to watch the Rebels this evening, so hopefully the power gets restored before those games start to throw the first pitch. And as we look towards northern, I believe this is Calhoun County, 121 outages just east of Highway 9 there. So just several sporadic outages, and that's where we sit right now. And as we look at our Northeast Mississippi Electric Power Association, this would be some of those reports coming out of the New Albany community, at least southwest of there towards Martintown. We're seeing 171 outages being reported as of around 1 o'clock, 1:02, and those have been in place for about 31 minutes. And then you're seeing just random outages here and there as we go right across the western Union County. So we're seeing that towards Galway, Enterprise, Poolville, just a few outages here and there. But if we're looking at the overall outages, this is looking at our poweroutage.us map. And where we start to get those blues showing up, that's indications of some power outages. Real quick, just bear with me behind the scenes. We're going to look at TIPA EPA so that way we can look at the outage map. And as I pull that up, right there towards northern TIPA County, getting a few of those being reported just around the Walnut community. That's about 122 customers being affected. And just outside of there, not as many, but a few outages here and there showing up. And as we get those yellows there towards Faulkner, that's going to be indications of about 35 outages. North of Dumas, 94 outages. So sporadic, Matt. It's not going to be a uniform distribution. It just depends on, honestly, where the lightning strikes and where the limbs fall. Those are the folks that are going to be affected.
And again, ice storm areas affected,
Yes,
for the
very
most
much.
part here where we have seen these, unfortunately. Gabe, I'll have you pull up rainfall totals here in a second, but I'll talk about that for a moment. Again, the warning we do have in play at this time here on Mama Justice Doppler radar is the one you see beside me for DeSoto County, parts of Marshall County, under a flash flood warning that remains in effect, I think, until 4:15. Reports again some flash flooding in the South Haven area with this rainfall estimations in some cases up in excess of 1.5 to 2 inches. That's one of the things that Gabe is again looking at behind the scenes here, is just how heavy some of those rainfall estimates are closer to the Memphis area up there. And there are other spots that are getting closer to those values as well, right, Gabe?
Unfortunately, you're exactly right. That leading edge just having several batches of heavy rainfall, and even back behind it, additional showers are continuing to develop, and that's adding to those totals. So where we have the flash flood warning in place, that's going to be for DeSoto County, and I'll stop looping it for a moment so we can look at those warnings. And that warning is in place until 4:15 on our Friday, and that includes parts of DeSoto and northwest Marshall County towards Byhalia. That's where we've gotten estimations of about 2 inches showing up towards South Haven, 2.2, right along I-69, 2.1 inches just northwest of Hernando, along 302 south of Collierville, 2.2 inches, and even there towards Byhalia, getting a bit of that as well, but around 1.1 inches. But those heavier downpours, and we see it often within the Memphis metro area, but even extending south of there into South Haven, that we do deal with those flooding concerns, just urban flooding where drainage systems can't keep up, or some ditches, some culverts that just can't keep up with the rainfall. So unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. But compare that to what our neighbors up north in Memphis and towards Millington and Bartlett are seeing. I mean, that's just a lot of rain. 5.6 inches up there towards Bartlett. Memphis getting about 2.1 northwest of there, or northeast of there, about 4.3. So you can see just where the highest numbers are, why the flash flood warnings are in place. As we look closer to our area, I'm going to swap this over to our Monroe County site because that shows a little bit more of that higher resolution. And Highway 30 seems to be the hot spot in the grand scheme of things. You can kind of see that towards Oxford, extending off of it, going towards New Albany, and even going up there towards Boonville, where we're getting the highest outputs. And that's where we've gotten the heaviest rainfall. And unfortunately, it's amounting to quite a bit. Remember last night, I told you guys that 3 inches would not be impossible in some spots just for Friday? Eastern Lafayette County. Keep in mind, that's also where we're seeing some of those power outages occur. So an unfortunate scenario as that heavy rainfall still moves in. Watching that progress up the line, New Albany seeing a good bit as well. We've seen some flash flooding, well, and fitting, right? Flash flood advisory just getting issued there for locations along that line. We're looking along Highway 30 and towards the south and east. That does include parts of Pontotoc, Tupelo, Manatee, Marietta, Algoma, and Verona, and even northern Chickasaw County included within that as well. That'd be closer to the Witch Dance exit on the Natchez Trace corridor. So that's what we're watching for. That advisory in place until 4:45, and it does accommodate for some additional chances of rainfall, that being back behind these heavy batches. And as I clear off those totals, you can see that, and we're actually going to bring up our rain rates. You can see the purple's indicating heavy rainfall, if not up to extreme thresholds, and that we'll put a few numbers on there. 7.6 inches an hour, that'd be towards the Toccopola area, I believe. Let me make sure. Yeah, Toccopola. So about 7 inches an hour just west of Pontotoc and even towards Pontotoc, getting a few of those 7-inch reports as well. Marietta even getting about 5.3 inches on the far northeast part of this advisory. And then back behind it, you can see some heavier sections southwest of New Albany. This will be moving west of Highway 15 and closer to Highway 30 once again, where you're getting 2 to potentially 3, potentially 4 or 5 inches an hour on top of what you've already seen. So this is adding to those totals and unfortunately making for a very soggy afternoon that might result in some flooding concerns. I know here in Tupelo, there are specific locations that do deal with some drainage issues. And while that's not really something we can avoid, we can clear out the culverts, we can clear out the ditches, but really it's just moving out of the area to let that rainfall kind of move in and clear on out, and then we'll be good to go. So we're going to continue to monitor that as that flash flood advisory just got issued by the National Weather Service up there in Memphis. So we'll continue to monitor that as this continues to move on through. But Matt, I mean, we saw it up in Northwest Mississippi, now sharing the love towards the central part of our viewing area.
And so let's talk about the contrast between those two here for a moment. So an aerial flood advisory, think water that sits and rises, whereas with a flash flood warning, that would be water that moves. So aerial flood is it's the kind where it just kind of comes up and like, oh, crud, it's in the house. Or now like the culverts or the drainage areas that typically are rough now are more rough and you try to get across. The distinction between the two is with you start talking about flash flood warnings, that's a situation where you could get swept away. You're more likely to lose your life in fast moving water because you lose control. Aerial flood warning tends to be, again, a notch or two lower just because you don't have the movement of the water. Still causes problems, still can cause a lot of damage, but I do want to draw the distinction between those two there. So, typically when we start talking flash flood warnings, we certainly don't want to drive through the water in either case, but that's the more likely situation for you to get swept away and have big problems with that. And the level above that, then the highest level flood alert, which we do not have any of these, but they did have these back in Huntsville. Was it last weekend, I think, where they had flash flood emergencies. So, that's not something we want to see. That's not something we have seen. We're not on track for that at this point. But all of that to say that water in some form or fashion remains the bigger headline, not tornadoes and sporadic wind damage and some hail a possibility as well. But no tornado risk with what we have out there. It is the water that's concerned today.
For sure. And any of those reports that our folks have out there in the field, make sure to send those in through the Mississippi Live Weather app. A big, cool partnership that we have with the National Weather Service in Memphis is they're able to see those pictures in real time. So even if it's a delayed report from us, they're able to see that in real time and issue those warnings as needed. But, just can't have too much communication in those formats. And it's honestly a great partnership and really grateful for the hard work that they do and the cool things that we're able to accomplish here at Mississippi Live Weather. So send in those reports. I do want to pull up the chat real quick and make sure I'm not missing anything there because I know some reports have come in. So still have power. Jay saying that towards Baldwin. Got strong with Old 9 near Enville. Lots of rain too. Yes, for sure. Power flickered 4 to 5 times in Cherry Creek. Crazy winds out in Palmetto. The similar reports. We're just getting a lot of rain and a good bit of wind as well. Kim saying about 30 minutes ago, it was like the water was just standing in the road in Baldwin and up through Frankstown on 145 and then up to 30 to the Geeville area. Drove very slowly, made it safely. Yes, drive slowly. Don't get out in it if you don't have to because you never know where the falling limbs will be or you'll never know where the heavy rainfall will be as well. Looking at the latest on lightning on this, I'm not seeing as much in regards to the strengthening phase that we had earlier on, Matt, and I think that a large part of that is due to the outflow being out ahead of this system. That's kind of limiting how much we're able to strengthen this afternoon.
Yeah, and I think that hopefully we'll keep most of those below severe limits. We shall see on that. I'm going to go. We can look at some of the pictures here. I think now the question I have is whether or not my system's going to let me do this because I reprogrammed something a week or so ago, and I'll bet that this takes me to the remote, which then doesn't allow me to show the pictures, does it? Now I'm going to have to pull it up the old school way to do that. So give me just a second to merge. Force that behind the scenes. Okay, and now I think I've got it to where we can show pictures. Okay, past Matt is not as smart as future Matt. So again, mainly just dark cloud sort of pictures that you've sent in from around the area, just the low-hanging stuff. And you can see some storage buildings there in the foreground. That picture coming in from West Thomas Street in Tupelo. That's one of those locations that does tend to have some flooding issues there in some spots along along Thomas Street there in Tupelo. But again, low-hanging clouds kind of as far as the eye can see. No tornadoes or anything like that. Sometimes the really wicked clouds, we like to say more bark than bite. This one from near Highway 9 there in Pontotoc and 278, about 1249. Shea sitting in this shot here of those low clouds. And this is kind of what we were talking about a minute ago, how you'll have this stuff kind of hanging down. It might look sort of twisty. I mean, without context, this looks like a wall cloud, which would be one of those tornado-producing clouds, right? Without context. But we know where this was. Pontotoc at the point a little before 1 o'clock when this is moving through, that is that rain-cooled air running ahead. There's nothing going up into this part of the thunderstorm. We could see some of the rain in the background there kind of as well. So it's why we call it a scary looking cloud, because on initial blush, even to a meteorologist, you go, now hold on, now where was that at? And we do the research, it's like, oh no. So it does have a tendency to look similar, but thankfully not be at the level we'd have to be overly concerned. We appreciate Shay for sharing that picture. And again, a lot of these kind of scary looking clouds coming in. Shelby sending this shot here, again, another one of those as well. Every once in a while I still jump when I hear a rumble of thunder. As well, especially when I know that probably hit a tree somewhere on the property. So that one was close. One of the many reasons we'll have some power disruptions. But these are going to be more bark than bite. With all the thunder, with some of the wind, with the low-hanging clouds, a lot of reasons to get concerned. But the reality is when we look at the radar data, which kind of tells the real story here, there's nothing on here that's concerning at this point. We go to the wind mode, again, just to kind of investigate. We do our due diligence on this as well. There's no greens and reds in any sort of fashion that I would be concerned with any rotation or anything like that. Just typical run-the-mill sort of thunderstorms. And let's be crystal clear about something. We're covering this because you have interest in this. The reality is that if you're tuning in because when Matt and the folks go live, I'm going to be in until they say it's time, then let's be clear here. There is no tornado threat with this. And if I were at the TV station where we couldn't cut in this situation, we wouldn't be cut in right now. But we have a 24/7 weather channel where we can cover disruptive weather. And so from time to time we do. Now, I'll say this, if we don't see some kind of upgrade in intensity, we probably will relieve ourselves. We'll probably come off of coverage at the 2 o'clock time period if we don't see some kind of uptick in intensity. Because the reality is that there are no severe thunderstorm warnings. These are noisy, disruptive thunderstorms, and they can cause sporadic damage, especially up here in the ice zone territory. As Gabe mentioned Saltillo area where it knocked down a branch into him. Same thing, Ecru back toward Bruce, Water Valley, down here toward Grenada. I mean, certainly is a possibility we could have that occur in some of those spots as well. Our cameras, I mentioned Calhoun County, Pittsburgh, we have a camera there, on one of the sheriff's towers up there with the North Mississippi storm chasers. There's those same dark, low-hanging clouds looking toward the horizon there in Calhoun County. Nearest reporting station, I think that might be pulling it all the way from the Tupelo station there, so that's a ways away. That's why it's 72 rain-cooled at that spot there. Our camera, again, showing some of the low-hanging clouds, kind of working its way back toward the left a little bit there. So this would be that shelf cloud. And, without reference to something else, it's easy to look at this and say, well, hold on, is that a wall cloud? No, it's not. That is just the rain-cooled air, again, moving toward the camera. And appreciate our partners there at the North Mississippi Storm Chasers for working with us here on this camera network. Out toward Houston as we go eastward. And again, those storms starting to move into Chickasaw County, toward Chickasaw County. But again, lots of different layers of low-hanging clouds, no tornadoes or anything. You're still in the sun there in Houston. Some heavy rainfall eventually working toward you. Camera on the south side of Tupelo as we work our way north into this. Again, it is driving rainfall. I'm not saying these aren't disruptive. These are disruptive storms. But if the definition of a severe thunderstorm is 58 or greater mile per hour winds or 1 inch hail, that's not what this is. This is measured at the airport at 47 mile per hour winds. And I think pretty consistently 35 to 45 mile per hour winds possible out of this storm. And so that is disruptive. It's going to bring down a few damaged tree branches, things of that nature. Not something you necessarily want to drive in, but also not necessarily something that's going to cause widespread sort of damage. But you can certainly see some of the water dripping off of whatever that cable is right there, kind of blowing around. Appreciate our partners, Mitchell Cunningham Bowling, for sponsoring our Tupelo Tower Cam here, and all of our partners here on Mississippi Live Weather this afternoon. Sliding over to Pontotoc County in this, Again, kind of past the first batch of heavy rain, another batch sort of moving in, sort of fuzzy look toward the horizon there. And we'll slide up toward Alcorn and Tishomingo counties, get some shots up that direction into it. Again, the heaviest of everything is past. Still gusty winds with this in Alcorn County. As you can see the camera here, we have in the Rienzi area kind of bobbing back and forth, 68 degrees there in South Alcorn County for the temperature, and over in Iuka coming in about 68 as well. The rain falling. But if I step to this side, you'll note here, not overly heavy on those latest radar returns there in and around that area. Our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor, again, looking at some of the pictures that you have sent in of these storms. Gabe?
Yeah, Matt, this was an incredible shot of a panoramic view at the Tupelo Airport. Keep in mind, this was an area that reported 47-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Now, granted, I believe that was the outflow boundary moving through. But nonetheless, Chris Whiteside doing a great job capturing that view there on the horizon. Moving into the airport, and you can see the dark clouds, the SLC, scary looking clouds that we call it. But definitely some dark clouds indicating a lot of heavy rainfall that we've gotten so far in Tupelo, along with that flash flood advisory. And I did see in the chat, James Bishop with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers letting us know that the Pittsboro reporting station is specific to that area and is accurate. Looking at the data, though, where the radar lined up, that was the outflow boundary. So the gustiest part of this whole day has been along that outflow boundary, anywhere from 30, 40, and pretty much 50 miles an hour there towards the Tupelo Airport. So great shot there, Chris. Thank you for submitting that picture. And we've gotten plenty of more of those coming in. The one thing that I've been watching for behind the scenes is hopefully not seeing any flooding reports. As that flood advisory is in place, it's more of a precautionary measure with the heavy rain that we've been receiving. But Matt, so far not getting verification there on the ground, and hopefully that continues to be the case. But if you do, send in those pictures to the Mississippi Live Weather app, and we will forward it along.
So that must mean that there's live data from Pittsboro, but that's not what's in our system at that moment there. I think that's pulling from a different site. So if you would, we might go check on their site on the camera page we look at behind the scenes to pull that up, and then we'll have to get that data routed where it needs to go there.
I'm not going to say it's that inaccurate, though. Like, it might still be around that same margin, because that outflow, I'm serious, it was breezy.
It is, at least it's a lot less humid there. Yes. Appreciate that, Gabe. I'm going to check our camera here as we kind of slide back here for a moment, and then I'll send you back over Chroma Key here for a minute as we're looking out in the Oxford area, again, under the heavy rainfall. Sometimes I like showing these cameras because they show something. Other times it's just a reminder that you get under one of these and they're kind of very tropical sort of showers, and just the quantity of rainfall that you see out of them. So very little visibility right now there in the Oxford area as that storm moves into and through town. Looking at the latest here, again, lightning, a little more clustered down here closer to Water Valley with this, where it is somewhat heavier. Looking three-dimensionally on these storms here in and around Oxford and Water Valley, and you'll notice that these just, when we sometimes look at these, it's like, oh, okay, we have clear cut, there's something big hanging out up here, that's going to be hail hitting the surface. That's not the case. The storm actually here near the Banner community, a little bit heavier than the one we have closer to Water Valley. So we need to get some storm tracks on these. Again, running ahead, this green line that you see there, that is our rain-cooled outflow boundary that we keep talking about, the outflowing of rain-cooled air from this, the reason why that's impactful. Let's get the speed. I'm going to get the latest updated speed on the movement of that. So give me just a moment to go back. So we show over the last hour, that one has gone about 25 miles per hour. So we're going to go based on the outflow speed. And before I clear that off, notice how much heavier, maybe darker red, these looked an hour ago versus where we're at now. We'll kind of advance it. And still some pockets where that's the case. And I'm going to have to get to that storm near Okolona and the other one near Amory here in just a moment to get a better look at that. But we'll kind of start back tracking, I'd say, all along that first batch of kind of gustier winds, because that initial wave there could be about as gusty as things get. So this is the first kind of big gush of winds out of these. We'll say 24 miles per hour there. So we show the Shepherd community pretty much now tranquil at 157, Egypt at 159, Pittsboro 159, 2 o'clock for both Pyland and Houston, Velma at 201, closer to, say, Macedonia there at 206, Treblock by about 209. As we kind of I'm going to make Treblock the first one there. We'll kind of continue that list. There we go. Prairie, looking about 217 for you. Derma, about 214. Unit, 216. Again, this is some gusty winds. These are non-severe thunderstorms, but damaged branches, things like that, more vulnerable. Calhoun City, 215, 218. Aberdeen and West Point, about 251 if it continues at the pace it's going right now, which is about 25 miles per hour. Let's go ahead and clear all that off. And let's look east here. The storm near Okolona, just south of Okolona, is about as strong as any that we do have. Looking 3D on that there, slicing into that one. There's a little bit of hail aloft on that one, right near the Chickasaw and Monroe County line. 2D look shows it's right over the county line there. So for folks, well, I mean, it's right over 45 alternate at this point. So that probably heading southward toward the Egypt community for folks who live out here near the Egypt community. Just, I guess that would be still, that's a little ways west of Lake Monroe there. But again, right over 45 alternate, where that is certainly some very heavy rainfall at least, and perhaps some hail out of that. Let's look over the last about 20 minutes. We'll make it a 15-minute question on how. So it actually might be moving a little bit east. Yeah, because it then makes sense to flow aloft to kind of hold it on the boundary there. So that's going to drop whatever hail or whatever it is just a little bit east of 45 alternate at the pace it's going now. Let's kind of look wider, see if there's another batch of something aloft there that pops out. There's not. So those are clearly our most intense storms at this point in time. So current time, speaking of point and time, is 1:56. Unless this one strengthens a little bit more, we'll probably suspend our coverage at 2 o'clock there. Again, if necessary, we can cut right back in. That's the beauty of this. But we also don't want to kind of overextend the fact that, you know, okay, we want people to know that when we're on, there's a fairly urgent need. With flash flood warnings, certainly that's something that we want to cover. But that's not necessarily something we stay on nonstop for. And with these marginally strong to possibly severe thunderstorms, it's good to give a heads up and then adjust accordingly. But yeah, right over 45 alternate where that storm is. Let's track specifically where kind of that is sort of going. And I would say that the hail is going to drop out of that pretty quickly here. I'm going to track it. We'll still stay at about 20 miles per hour. But notice I'm going almost directly east with this there. It's really in the next few minutes that this, you know, a little after, it says all the way to the Tranquil community at 2:14. So that's still a ways away. So it's pretty much right over top. Or I think Tranquil is actually a church, if memory serves. It is, in fact. So about 2:14 for folks that live near that church there. At 2:18 there, Lake Monroe. But it probably drops wherever it drops a little bit before that point in time. Let's check in with Gabe on power outages. We'll keep it kind of quick so we can get out here on time, Gabe. But what you got?
Two big things I want to go over real quick. The folks here at the North Mississippi Storm Chasers getting reports of big limbs down on County Road 97 in Ingomar. So if you are up around that area, a little bit of a heads up if you're traveling around 97. And there are two vehicles hydroplaned on Highway 6 and Highway 315 in Panola County. Significant ponding on the roads. That was from, I believe it was Tyler with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers. And on top of that, we have power outages to worry about. So plenty of factors. That includes over here in Lee County with the sporadic outages across the region just due to those lightning strikes. And there's not a ton of them, but some of those lightning strikes reaching the ground and those sub-severe gusts knocking down a few lines as well. So Matt, we're watching several different factors, but fortunately no tornadoes. And fortunately, the reports still remain pretty minimal in the grand scheme of things as we head through the night. So definitely going to continue to monitor this, cut in as needed. But yeah, definitely grateful that we've stayed below severe limits so far.
Okay, so those reports look like the North Mississippi Storm Chasers have got those into the Weather Service. So
Yes.
good to see that. And I'm going to check before we get out here too far. I want to double check to see kind of the pictures that people have sent in. Again, does not look like we have any damage pictures at this time. And so that's good news. And hopefully that will continue to be the case. But if you do have damage to report, you can send those in using the Mississippi Live weather app. we talked about this a moment ago here. A flash flood warning remains in effect for locations up here in DeSoto County, parts of Marshall County under that flash flood warning. The heaviest part of these storms has moved just out of the area. 24-hour rainfall totals, you can see in the yellows there, in excess of 2 inches. If I made that 3-hour rainfall totals, it's the exact same number. So most of this, again, have fallen in the last few minutes here. There are other spots out south of Oxford and New Albany where we have had rainfall amounts of similar amount. It's obviously happened kind of in a big hurry here. I'm going to check the chat before we kind of dive off of this. Again, appreciate Mama Justice and Room to Room, some of our main sponsors here on Mississippi Live, including the Room to Room Weather Center here. Raining hard, much needed cool off. I agree with both of those assessments of what we have out there. And for folks who are ahead of this, I see someone asking about Grenada. Here's kind of the kind of wrap up. And if necessary, again, we'll come back here and we'll talk more about this. But if you're ahead of this, expect some strong gusty winds with this outflow. It's this green line you see there, kind of moving from north to south through the area. That'll continue to produce some strong gusty winds, maybe 40, 45 miles per hour as it moves through. Behind this is heavy rainfall, in some cases flooding rainfall. And we have a non-zero chance of seeing some strong to severe thunderstorms today. Our severe weather risk, a level 1 out of 5, where you see the green here, a possibility that we could see some strong gusty winds. That's where the damage and wind risk is that we're showing there. Large hail on our True Shield large hail risk, not something that we're expecting. And tornado risk, not something that we're expecting as well. So the takeaway is this: maybe we could have some strong gusty winds. And with vulnerable trees after the ice storm, that remains probably our peak concern. But these thunderstorms will slide southward through the area over the next couple of hours here, and some sporadic wind damage remains a possibility out of the strongest of these. Again, our next live broadcast is coming up at 5 p.m. If not necessary that we come back a little bit earlier. And just if you want that extra bit of heads up, probably the best way to do that is to make sure that you have Weather Call. It's a phone alert system that we talk a lot about here on Mississippi Live. Calls you if tornado warnings are issued, calls you if tornadoes are confirmed. Now, neither of those calls should go out today, but it'll also call you for flash flood emergencies, like what happened back in Huntsville this last weekend. And also, it'll call you for folks that if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning. We haven't had those. That would be the most likely call today. But we're not talking high-end severe thunderstorm warnings. We're talking one of those maybe, possibly sporadic wind sort of situations there. So probably the easiest way to make sure that you're ahead of any of these storms is using Weather Call. And with that in mind, I think we'll go ahead and suspend coverage here as of now about 2:03. Mississippi Live Weather app, again, free and available for all those different devices. I'll pop up the QR codes, but I think it's going to I have some coding here. It's probably going to pop this right down in a second, so I'll pop it right back up. But if you are watching us on the various social medias, I know a lot of folks watch us on YouTube, on Facebook there, then, again, make sure that you have the app. It'll give you alerts ahead. Like, I'll be perfectly honest, before Gabe popped in, I've been on vacation all week this week, and so my first alert was my wife's phone said, lightning detected 10 miles from that. So I got off the couch and I looked, I'm like, lightning detected 10 miles from that. Of course, Gabe was already dressed in a suit at that point, which is, thank you, Gabe Maynor, for being on top of things as well. But that's why I want to emphasize we are a team here on Mississippi Live. It's not just Matt and friends. Instead, it's a team that with very essential folks to make sure that we keep you and your family safe. All right. So our next live broadcast, I mentioned this a moment ago. We'll go and clear this off here. Is scheduled for tonight at 5 o'clock. Gabe will be here at 5. And Gabe and I, if necessary, will be back in to bring you more coverage. But we do not expect to have a lot of extended coverage today because the reports of severe weather should be so sporadic. We will see you coming up at 5 and 6 here from the Room to Room Weather Center.